Hi, welcome to the episode 3 of Learning Rotoscopy, the step-by-step series. The topic of this session is going to be objects, layers, and mats. We'll be taking a closer look at how to create the first roto node, what is a mask, creating your first mask, objects and nodes parameters or properties. How do you preview the alpha, controlling the masks from the object list, layers and their functions, creating layers and linking objects, optimizing your playback. So a lot of ground to cover here. So let's jump right in.
Now, if by any chance you have landed on this video, I recommend watching the series in the order. Also, if you're watching this video on YouTube, then I invite you to visit my website www.motiontuition.com, where you would find a lot of free tutorials. I have other sessions available in various categories, like maybe if you want to learn motion graphics or 2D animation, video editing, 3D modeling, 3D animation, amongst others. You can do that there. And you can even consider subscribing too for as little as 250 rupees per month and get access to the whole library of video sessions which I'm updating on regular basis. Do check out the MT Creative Labs, which you can simply think of as a personalized one-to-one tuition where I teach live and you get to interact with me. I solve your questions which you may face while you're working. You can also get in touch with me through the contact page. I will be happy to answer any of the questions or messages that you may have. If you think you have got some value out of this session, consider subscribing the channel, hit the like button and ring the bell icon so you get regular updates whenever I release my next video.
So without any further delays, let's get into today's topic, which is objects, layers, and mats. First, I'm going to be looking at how to create the first roto node. Now, the way you create your first roto node is by just dragging and dropping your first roto node into the tree section here. And you can do that by simply searching for the word roto, and this node will jump right at you from here, and you can just simply drag and drop it. So that's one way of doing it. Another way could be that, for example, let's assume that we already know that we are going to be using this session to rotoscope. All right, so we already know it. All right, so what we can do is we can simply start off by dragging and dropping this image sequence into the tree section here and start off by creating the first session. I'm going to call this test, and let's choose the template to be the roto template. All right, and once we do that, Silhouette is going to go ahead and give you all the tools and the nodes necessary to start rotoscoping. All right, as far as the workspace goes, you can stick to the default workspace, that's fine, and let the other things be okay. Just double check the frame rate, of course, that goes without saying, and then say okay. And you will notice that the roto node is there by default, ready to go. Okay. Another thing to notice here is that as soon as you click off the roto node or click on this node, or let's say you click on the output node, there's something happening here on this side. So what is happening is that as soon as you click on the roto node, the tools become available, and these tools are the ones which are going to be helpful to do rotoscopy. All right, now I am going to be starting off very simple, and I'm going to be first talking about how to use these tools. So let's first understand what is a mask. Okay, now a mask is anything that either conceals or reveals a part of the footage or an image. All right, in this case it's a footage. So what I mean by that is, let's say if I take this rectangle tool here and I draw out a rectangle for the torso of this lady, in green. This is the area that is going to be masked out, right? And this is what I'm calling a mask. So when I release it, you see that's something just happened over here in the object list. The square node created an object which is called square. Now, if I go ahead and take the circle and draw a circle out here for the head portion, there's another object which is being shown here by the name of circle. So anything that you draw in the viewer, that is going to be listed as an object here in the object list. All right. Now, why am I calling these masks? I already told you that a mask either conceals or reveals a part of an image. So let's see that in action. If I go ahead and press A, well, this is what the masked out portion is. Right now, what's happening is that this portion is going to be separated from the background. And this is what I'm calling the part that is being masked out. Okay. Now, let's understand the concept of concealing and revealing. If I press the letter A on the keyboard again, it's going to convert this screen into a black and white space, right? So the area which is being covered right now by these two shapes is in white and rest is in black. So this area is being masked out, okay, or to say that this area is being hidden or being concealed, okay, and this area in white is being revealed, okay. So that's what the mask is in its true sense. All right, so these two masks are basically revealing this part and concealing this part. And in technical terms, this is called an alpha or an alpha matte. Okay, so whenever I say that we need to check our alpha, that would essentially mean that we are basically referring to this mode or this version. Now, if I press A again, I will switch back to my RGB mode where I'm going to see all of the colors and the footage in its real sense. But if I go and press A again, this is going to show me a preview of where the masks are lying right now. Okay, so that's how you basically go ahead and create your masks. All right, so now let's look at what now let's look at the parameters over here in these two panels, and let's understand what are they going to do. So first off, understand one thing, that these two shapes that I just draw have their individual controls. So I can switch off their visibility by just clicking on this eye. That's one. I can even switch how they are going to behave. So right now what this shape is doing is it's cutting into this square, right? So I would say that this shape is getting subtracted from this shape. All right, that would be the right term to use. And if I click on it one more time, then this shape is intersecting with this square. The circle is intersecting with the square, and when it's going to intersect, it's going to leave out this portion as a result, right? And then if I click on it one more time, so there are these couple of different modes which you can always go ahead and refer to. Now this is the layer, the object color, which you can of course change from here. Sometimes it just helps visually to understand what we are looking at, because a lot of times what would happen is that there would be a lot of objects in inside of the object list. Now another thing to understand here is that the parameters here are related to whatever you are selecting. So if I'm selecting the circle, it's showing me the parameters for this circle. If I'm selecting the square, same thing, right? But another thing to consider here is that if you click on the Roto node, well, I don't see anything here. That's because I am not looking at the properties of the node. In order to be able to see those, I'll need to switch the tab here. And this is where I'm basically looking at the properties or the parameters of the Roto node. Okay, so this is how it's all lined up. The next concept to understand here is going to be about layers. Now, what are layers? Now, you can consider layers as the supersets of a lot of operations or a lot of commands that you are going to execute in future. So, for example, tracking, you will need layers when you are going to track. Now, let me go ahead and show you how to create layers, and we'll look at the different functionalities of layers in the coming sessions. The way you create a layer is just by reaching out to this option here, which is a stack of layers with a plus sign, and you click on that. So that's a layer right there. Now, what you can also do is you can select both of these shapes and just drag and drop it onto the layer here. So what that would do is it would make these two shapes a child of this layer, right? So whatever happens to this layer is going to translate to all of the children below. And this is basically how you go about linking your objects to the layers. You see this link over here? So this is telling me that these two shapes are linked to this layer and they are maintaining a parent and child relationship. So whatever happens to this layer is going to translate to the children also. Okay, so that's a good way of organizing stuff. You can also think of it as one of those groups which we often use while using softwares like Photoshop or Illustrator and things like that. So but this layer function here is much more powerful, and we will be looking at the different functions in future. But this is something that you should really understand in order to work efficiently inside of Roto. Now, a lot of times what would happen is that when you're working inside of Silhouette, when you're rotoscoping or you're compositing, your system, your machine may slow down on you, and there are ways for optimizing your workflow. There are different techniques that I'm going to be talking about now to optimizing your playback. All right, and the first in the list is by going into preferences on a Windows machine. That should be under the edit, uh, and inside of the preferences, if you come down to the cache, the second option, there are a lot of options here which you can control. The main ones being the percentage of total physical RAM that you are allotting to the software. That's 50% by default. The amount of preloaded frames that you want Silhouette to preload before playback. Whether or not you want the cache to be purged when you load a project, and what is the percentage of ROI over scan. Now, ROI is a term which is abbreviated for region of interest, and I'm going to be talking about the ROI in a bit. So you can adjust all of these settings here, and I'm going to be leaving out these at default. I'm going to be canceling things out here. Let's talk about the region of interest for a moment. I'm going to be disabling the visibility of this layer so that I can see this in clear view. And if you look up here, there are a lot of different options, and the one that we are looking for is this. So if I just click on it, I will get some transformation handles all around the viewport. Okay, so what I can do is I can simply just close this out, bring it closer to the subject, and now what is going to happen is that when I play back, Silhouette is only going to consider the pixels that are in the region of interest. Okay, it's not going to consider the other pixel information which is outside the ROI. All right, so that's the benefit. The next big control that you can consider while you're working is the use of proxies. And let me show you what are proxies. When I come up to this option, it says 1:1. Okay, and that is another way of saying that whatever is being loaded onto the viewer, it's on a 1:1 ratio in terms of the pixels. It's playing back. It's playing back on 1:1. Every pixel is being shown in the viewport. As soon as I switch it to 2:1, what starts happening is that whenever I'm going to play it, it's going to play every other pixel. I go to 4:1. Well, now you can start to see a lot of quality in terms of the pixels being compromised. So now when I play back, every quarter, every fourth pixel is going to be played back. However, the uh, the playback is still in real time. So that's the good part. Now, one more control that you can choose to maybe adjust while you're working is getting rid of the cache. Now, cache are your temporary files which get filled up very quickly when you're working with things like video and animation. So, if you want to get rid of the cache, you can just come down to session and just choose purge RAM cache. So, a lot more cache would be available to you. And the first time that you're going to play back, it's going to load up the pixels into its RAM, and then everything is going to be good. So those are few ways of optimizing your playback. Next, we are going to be looking at the actual process of rotoscopy.